Hello everybody. Today I want to discuss a favorite film of mine. Well, every film I've discussed so far more or less is a favorite film of mine. That's why I'm here doing this. This is a movie I can watch year-round, multiple times a week, multiple times a month. I could put it on in the background, put it on when I'm going to bed. I truly just enjoy this film, and that is Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove.
If the pilot's good, see, I mean, if he's really sharp, he can barrel that baby in so low. I mean, you ought to see it sometime. It's a sight. A big plane like a 52 room. It's jet exhaust frying chickens in the barnyard.
This is a fantastic movie. It's obviously a satirical piece.
Shoot it off! Shoot with a gun! That's what the bullets are for, you twit!
Okay. I'm gonna get your money for you. But if you don't get the President of the United States on that phone, you know what's gonna happen to you?
What?
You're gonna have to answer to the Coca-Cola company.
As it came out during a time of tumultuous tensions between the US and the Soviet Union. It touched on the Cold War, it touched on the prospect of nuclear war, and it's hilarious and extremely well done. It is a stellar cast, and just to name a few, you have Peter Sellers, George C. Scott, Sterling Hayden, and a whole cast of characters that just fit every role perfectly. The story is pretty simple. It tells the tale of this general, Sterling Hayden, who basically goes off on the deep end and thinks that the Russians are on this mission worldwide or in the US to strip us of our bodily fluids. So he orders a nuclear attack to a stealth bomber that's high above wherever it is, and he blocks off all communications to them and locks everything down and puts everything in a place where this cannot be stopped. So it's about basically the powers that be, the president, the generals, whoever is in the war room in the US dealing with their counterparts in Russia to stop an imminent nuclear war that happened basically through a kook.
Realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face. Go and play a dead game, soldier. That's nice shooting, soldier.
And within this film, you just have hilarious moments outside from the political satire, the message, or whatever Kubrick was trying to portray with this. You just have a tight script. And a lot of people think of Stanley Kubrick, they think of The Shining, they think of A Clockwork Orange, they think of Full Metal Jacket. But what they don't think of is his comedy. This movie is hilarious. I recommend this to so many people who haven't seen it and say you'll laugh out loud. At least I did. I mean, George C. Scott's character is hilarious. There's so many ad-libbed scenes. His interaction with the president, played by Peter Sellers, is a fantastic moment. I mean, even Sterling Hayden is hilarious in his speeches and his soliloquies. And on that note, aside from the humor and the amazing timing and the beats of the comedic aspect of this film, you also have a very well-written script where speeches are given, where there's banter, and there's just, it feels realistic, and it feels like a small film, but it's also a big film considering the stakes that are involved. The black and white is a really cool aspect to it. It never feels dated. The scenes in the sky with the flying, they do come across hokey, but it's meant to, I think, because like I said, it is a more or less a comedy with a serious undertone.
Stay on the bomb run, Ace. I'm going down below and see what I can do. Roger.
But throughout the film, basically, they're trying to stop this general, this nuclear war from happening, and eventually they do not succeed. The world basically goes into nuclear war at the end, but everything in between is just leading up to that, and their failed attempts at trying to stop this from happening. And there's so many moments, whether it's Sterling Hayden's character going from this gung-ho general who's ready to stop everybody from taking over his mission to realizing he's defeated and going into the bathroom to kill himself. You have Mandrake's character played by Peter Sellers, and he's a British guy, and he's desperately trying to stop this, and his emoting of panic, fear of being around this wingnut general and how that escalates.
Mandrake, come here.
You calling me, Jack?
Come over here and help me with this fella.
I haven't had very much experience, you know, with those sort of machines, Jack. I've only ever pressed a button in my old Spitfire.
Hendrik, in the name of Her Majesty and the Continental Congress, come here and feed me this bell, boy.
George C. Scott's character as General Buck Turgidson is hilarious. There's a scene where he actually falls backward, rolls, and gets up, but he ad-libbed the whole scene when he actually fell by accident, and Kubrick kept it in.
Automatically. It's an obvious comic trick, Mr. President. We're wasting valuable time. Look at the big boy. They're getting ready to clobber us.
Peter Sellers as the president is really funny. You know, his speeches, his lecturing of George C. Scott's character. I love that little sequence between the two.
Mr. President, I'm not saying we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but I do say no more than 10 to 20 million killed, tops, depending on the breaks.
I will not go down in history as the greatest mass murderer since Adolf Hitler.
Perhaps it might be better, Mr. President, if you were more concerned with the American people than with your image in the history books.
General Turgidson, I think I've heard quite sufficient from you. Thank you very much.
Peter Bull, who's a famous character from that era, he's in another one of my favorite movies, which is Christmas Carol, Alistair Sim, and he plays the narrator of that movie. So he's a familiar voice in this era of film, and prior to this movie coming out, you have his dynamic with General Buck Turgidson.
When they are exploded, they will produce a doomsday shroud, a lethal cloud of radioactivity which will encircle the Earth for 93 years.
What a load of commie bull. I mean, after all.
It basically is just, there's not a lot to talk about with this film. There's not a lot to engage with. I mean, I can go into the details of the satire and what he meant by this and what he meant by that, but as strictly as a film, I highly recommend this movie. It's funny, it's well written, it's well shot. Obviously, you have Stanley Kubrick. It's well directed. And the editing, the pacing of it, there's really not a bad thing I can say about this movie. You have the airplane crew by Slim Pickens, who, you know, they're on this mission. They feel like they're doing this patriotic thing to fight against the Ruskies, as they would say. You know, they never thought they'd get the order to, you know, drop nuclear bombs, but here they are doing what they got to do. And unfortunately, nobody can get to them to say, hey, it's a false alarm. This guy's nuts. He ordered you to do it. So you have their story up in the air where there's a young James Earl Jones.
Major Kong, is it possible this is some kind of loyalty test? You know, give the go code and then recall to see who would actually go?
It's a movie of characters and well-acted characters. I mean, Peter Sellers plays three people, I think. The President, Mandrake, and Dr. Strangelove, who shows up about halfway, three-quarters through the film to give his advice on what to do with it, and that's an extremely memorable character. I mean, I think he has the last line in the movie where he stands up and says,
Mr. President, we must not allow a mine shaft gap.
Sir, I have a plan. Monsieur, I can walk!
You know, this movie is just incredibly unique because, as I said, it's a comedy, it's a drama, it's a black comedy, but there really hasn't been anything like it or anything perfected like it. I mean, Kubrick went into this, I'm assuming, you know, he was going to do a comedy and a satire, but it's really an amazing film in itself. You know, like I said, the writing, the screenplay, there's not a bad thing I can say about this movie. Incredible acting all around, laugh out loud, highly enjoyable. George C. Scott's performance for the ages, you know, his caricature, the way he delivers lines, his gum chewing, his I don't know, he just created a persona in this movie that is laugh out loud, in my opinion. And the same goes for Peter Sellers, the same goes for General Ripper, played by Sterling Hayden. I think I'm going to watch this again tonight. And if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend watching Dr. Strangelove.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
Thank you.